area that I have some concern about is the additional capital funding, which is related to that DFA decision, I guess, but I just want to read it as a standalone decision, and that's the 30 million plus 20 million increase in capital funding under B Roman 3. Chair, I have some concern about some of these, and this is all pretty fresh to us, so I want to ask, particularly on Lincoln Road, $6 million, and from memory that is an NZTA asset. They have signalled that they would like to kick off their disposals around that. But that just, I thought we had a collaborative approach with the NZTA. I would like some further information on this. I'm aware of a property at the bottom of Union Street which we transferred to the NZTA for $1. I'm aware that at the bottom of Union Street we're held up on, or I think it's Development Auckland's held up on the possible development of housing there because of a designation which is not put in place. So I'm concerned about us jumping into expending that sort of capital with our partner in Auckland that might be demanding that disposal and our acquisition. Can we have some further information on that?
Yes. Welcome, Richard. Thank you.
Madam Chair. I think the situation on the years gone by has changed. There's intense pressure on building housing in Auckland, and NZTA and every other government agency that owns land in Auckland is coming under intense pressure to release that land for housing. So the window of opportunity for us to acquire land off government agencies is relatively narrow, really. I've explained for a number of items in this proposal. We need the ability to get in and buy these things as and when they become available, and not subsequently when they've had houses built on them.
So just, can we correlate that with the Union Street decision? You'll be familiar with that decision.
Not, no.
Okay. But Madam Chair, I'm aware that the designation down there for the additional harbour crossing is still not confirmed, yet another part of our organisation is being told not to develop that land at 106, I think, Cook Street rather than Union Street, which is... So we don't have that information here, but for me this is just indicative of playing the game one way in one place and differently elsewhere. So I have concern about this whole package here. I think that is in some way a breach of the contract that we had through the LTP, and as the Mayor said, it's not a time for substantive change. So I'm just echoing now, I have concern about the raising of the 20 and 30, but I'll address that probably in the debate.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor. We will find out about that Union one for you with Union Street. Richard, this fund, it's there in case you need it. It's not a drawdown.
I think Matthew might want to correct me, but I think once you vote on it today, if you establish that extra funding, we will spend it on these particular properties as and when we need it.
Thank you. As and when you need it. Yeah, thank you. Councillor Casey.
Oh, I've got a couple of questions from the Mayor about his selective listening in relation to the interim transport levy.
Sure.
The first is he didn't mention at all the 15 local boards who support the fairer redistribution of responsibility for the interim transport levy. And he was there all day when we heard the boards, so it's not in his written report, he hasn't mentioned it, so I'd like him to address that. Secondly, again, selective listening, he talked about the transport gigs he was out across Auckland. I was at the Have Your Say events. There was no question in my mind, and it's supported by the officer's report, that 52% of the people, the real people who attended those, thought it was fairer for business to pay their fair share. And finally, I'm really perturbed that in talking about the interim transport levy, he mentioned the tripartite summit as if there was some relationship between the two. So my question is, did you not want to go into the tripartite summit having burdened business with a fairer share of the interim transport levy, because you should never have had that in the same sentence.
All fair comment, Madam Chair. Okay, so the local boards for a start, and Councillor Cathy has spent so much of the day talking about the local boards already. I thought that they'd probably had their day in the sun. If I might just reflect on the local boards and their feedback. The local boards are a part of our partnership, part of the Auckland Council. Perhaps if there's one comment to make about the local boards' feedback is too often it was about us, about them rather than about us. And this will be a continuous theme for me through the last 5 months of this term, is that we can put whatever structure we like in place for local boards and for the governing body. If one part talks about us and not the we as a council, then we have got a problem. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, just in terms of the local board's viewpoint on this issue, I went to many of those feedback sessions, as well as, of course, attending all those transport sessions specifically with the community. And I didn't see business represented there. They very rarely turn up to those sort of shows. They make specific recommendations back. And so if the local boards were to listen to not the overwhelming view, but if they were to listen to the view of those that turned up at that, if that was their sole thing, then it doesn't surprise me that that's where they're at. And of course the local boards have a primary focus on community. So I completely understand where their view might be. That's okay. But I don't agree with them. Then...
Please, point of order. Point of order. Linda, I'm just ignoring Lisa at the moment.
Yeah. And then in terms of community,
Lisa, I don't want to have to ask you to leave, but you know, if you were in Parliament, you'd be out the door by now. We're just actually trying to get through this. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Lisa. Carry on, Mr. Mayor.
Madam Chair, in terms of community, it's pretty much a split vote.
Splinters on a broomstick.
And look, as I said before, you know, the community, if you are totally and completely focused on ensuring a diminished residential rating burden, then of course this is where they would be. You know, there are of course arguments for an equity position, and I accept that, but I don't agree with them. And so, I've stated my view. I think there was a third thing.
Tripartite.
Look, what I also have taken the opportunity to, Councillor Cathy, is to reflect the fact that you know, we as a city represent residential, rural and business ratepayers. I think it's critical for myself as the Mayor to reflect as much as possible the fact that we are a business-friendly city and that we are looking to build business. And why are we doing that? Because it's providing jobs for our young people as they come out of school.
It's not true.
It's building a great economy.
She's going to have to go.
So, look, Madam Chair, I appreciate the questions, and that's my answer.
Thank you. Councillor Lee.
Yes, Madam Chair. A technical question, really, and it relates to the capital funding sought by Auckland Transport last week. I just wonder, given the public have been consulted at length on items such as Maryland rates remission, which, to be fair, is not a significant amount of money, whether this, what is it, 80 million, 70 million has gone through due process in the annual plan, or has it just been sprung on us at the last minute? And I say us advisedly as a director of Auckland Transport as well. Is it okay to spend that money when it hasn't been through a public process?
So, happy to respond, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
So it's a fair question, and a question that staff turned their mind to in the process of putting the consultation document together and thinking through the realities of some very large parts of council, Auckland Transport no less, dealing with large capital programs and a fairly dynamic environment. So if you take a close look at the consultation document, we did outline the nature of the normal standard capital program review that the organisation would be undertaking, and indeed we did outline one or two areas where we thought there would be scope for change, and this was included. Equally, it was judged at the time that the thinking wasn't necessarily sufficiently flushed out, nor was it of a local government significant threshold level that we needed to give more material than we were able to give at the time.
It kind of sounds like a no, but...
well, no, it's a yes.
It is a yes. So it's okay to... We consult at length on items such as Maori freehold land rate submission, but we don't consult on major and really last-minute requests for... Was it $70 million, just like that? 300 million really was... 300 million was the first ask, but it got knocked back. But apparently... Anyway, okay.
Thank you.
So it's okay? It's okay.
It's okay. Member Tamahiri.
Public, it's okay.
Oh, no, Madam Chair, I'll just waive my debate right at the moment. We'll wait for the debate.
Okay, yeah, no, that's fine. Councillor Walker.
Sure. So just on the diversified financial asset portfolio, the wording reads that we're going to draw down up to 100 million per annum. And the references around managing our debt ratios. So am I to understand that if we are able to manage our debt ratios appropriately, we may not need to draw down up to 100 million a year? It could be considerably less than that, or are you just basically saying that we're going to take the lot, that is the 100 million each year?
Everybody will make that decision.
I'm just trying to get a handle on how we're going to manage it, because obviously people are concerned around debt and prudent management of debt, and I also sympathise with a number of the comments that Councillor Darby has made that go to rainy day fund.
Through the Chair, so it's a perfectly reasonable question, and the recommendation's being worded like that for a reason, and the reason is to provide the CFO with sufficient flexibility to make those decisions. So we're talking about large programs underneath this, so a capital program of 1.9 billion. They're forecasts. One thing you know is the actual outcome will be different than that. So the recommendation here simply gives Sue Tyndall sufficient flexibility to make those calls over the period of the next year or two.
Okay, and the other question I've got is just around the Maori freehold land rates for emissions, and that particularly just goes to one example, which is TRI, where we've got some land, my understanding is commercial redress. Essentially the land is being developed, exclusive properties, very exclusive golf course, so we are capturing rates on that, and
yes,
appropriate rates?
Definitely. They'll be, if it's being developed, it'll be rated the same as similar land next door. If there's a little bit that's in Urupā, then they'll be treated, what we've got here would treat them the same way as a cemetery elsewhere, or Urupā elsewhere. Okay. So it's just about making sure we can look through the particular legal structure of Maori land to ensure that we're rating equitably on the wealth that can be generated from those properties comparative to other ones.
And the great piece of land they're giving back to the council as a regional park won't be rated either. Thank you. Councillor Hulse.
It's fine, Madam Chair. My question was asked. Mine was way back during Councillor Darby's series of questions. They were answered.
Were they? Thank you. Councillor Cooper.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's just going back to the diversified portfolio of assets conversation, and you've been asked some questions around and we've had this rainy day thing, and I actually coined that way back when we first discussed that. So it's being used in the term, in a pejorative term that I didn't intend it to be used as, because we actually have insurances, EQC, all of those tools to deal with actual emergencies. So what I want to ask is, $300 million worth of shares at this moment, and as shares are always risky, you know, there's risk in holding shares, and we know that it might be okay to borrow to buy shares, but it's not prudent. If we were setting up a new council now, given that you good officers have good financial brains, would it be something you would think would be prudent to say, we're setting up a new council, we're going to raise rates of 300 odd million and go and buy some shares? Yeah. Woohoo! Because that's the context this is in, really, isn't it?
Yeah. So through the chair, just a correction. I mean, we wouldn't raise the funds through rates. So I mean,
so how would you raise the funds if you were going to buy shares?
As you pointed it out, through borrowing. So that, I think that's the
which is highly risky, isn't it?
Yeah. So through the chair, right now for this council, our answer would be consistent with our advice, which would be no. And that's consistent with the feedback that you got from both EY and Cameron Partners. I think the important thing